This is April 13th, 2024, and I'm with Ann,
Kelton.
who has been at Fort Chaffee in the Fort Smith area for over
My entire life.
your
And
entire
Fort
life.
Chaffee was started in 41.
Yes,
I think.
41.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, it was Camp Chaffee, correct?
Yes, it was.
So, can you tell me a little bit about, like, maybe some family history that may have been involved of Camp Chaffee being built?
No, I just know that I don't know how it all came about, but I guess the city of Fort Smith, all that was farmland
Okay.
and established homes and everything. And the way I understand it, they just kind of went in. I guess took what they wanted, or bought them out. I don't know.
But
Really
they,
know
yeah,
how
okay.
it happened.
Okay, so at that time, Fort Smith was probably a small area, and some of those towns around it, like Levac and
Oh
all that,
yeah,
didn't exist.
yeah, they were. It was all small, really, everything.
So after Fort Chaffee, well, Camp Chaffee then, correct,
Right.
was established, that's where everything started booming,
Right.
started growing. So, did you happen to work on Fort Chaffee during that time?
I think I went out there in '61, so no, it was all up and going by then.
Okay.
But I was trying to think. It was during the Berlin crisis,
Okay.
and I think that was '60.
61. Yeah, that was during the Vietnam era and the Cold War era.
Yes.
Okay, so you probably remember when the Vietnamese were there during the internment camps or
Yes.
refugees.
Yes.
What was that like?
It was. They were all real nice, and I worked in a clothing issuing them clothing when they were
Really?
ready to leave Fort Chaffee,
Uh huh.
and I got acquainted with some that just a couple of young kids that I kind of got acquainted with,
Yeah.
and they were just all just as nice as they could be. Now, is that what you girls remember?
Okay. So when they were here, crime wasn't all that bad or anything in Fort Smith, was it?
Well, I think it's always kind of been bad. We just kind of ignored it. And really, back years ago, South Fort Smith wasn't the place you wanted to live.
Right.
But then it all changed, and then everything got better.
Okay. And this was during when the Vietnamese were here. So do you remember when the German POWs were stationed at Fort Chaffee in 42?
Now, my dad worked there at that time,
Okay.
and he got acquainted with a few of the prisoners. And I always remember him telling me this. One of their prisoners told my dad he was a carpenter, so
Okay.
he was around them a lot and in working and all. And he said, if your big man and my big man had to go to war, there wouldn't be a war. So, a lot of truth in that.
So, when the Germans were here, they helped do some of the construction around Fort Smith and the surrounding communities.
Well, I don't know if I've ever read that. Have y'all?
I think just out Chaffee.
Yeah,
Just out of
that's all I
Chaffee.
ever knew of.
Okay.
In fact, I think they had to stay on base. I think.
Okay. So, what about during the Korea? Do you remember if there was any type of refugees or POWs there during the Korea?
Not during that I remember.
Not that you remember.
Do y'all help me if you think of anything?
No, I've never heard of it.
Okay. So you watched Camp Chaffee turn into Fort Chaffee.
Right.
So during the 50s area, Camp Chaffee, well, Fort Chaffee at that time, was like a basic training reception area.
Right.
So let me ask you something. I've been asking a lot of people. I've asked Debbie. I haven't been able to ask your daughters, but I've asked a few other people. Now I know Elvis Presley came to Fort Chaffee for reception. Did he ever perform here in Fort Smith? 'Cause that's the rumor I've heard, is that he performed there at Ed Walker's.
I have never heard that before.
You've never heard that
Myself,
before?
no, I haven't.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it didn't happen. But I
Right.
know.
Well, I'm sure you probably would have known it if
Yeah,
that
I think
happened.
I would.
Did you ever try to go up to Fort Chaffee while he was there and try and get a look?
No, I
No?
don't believe so.
Okay.
I I guess I was a little older. I don't remember. Y'all aren't helping me any.
Well, no, you would have only been about, what year was you?
That was 54, I believe.
That was the year you graduated, Mom.
Yeah.
54 was the year you graduated.
Yeah. Everybody was crazy about him, and it was really a big thing that Elvis was
Here.
Fort Chaffee.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, moving on to that, can you tell me what the jobs were like in the Fort Smith and surrounding areas when Fort Chaffee was actually a military post?
I think everything built up at that time and better jobs. That's how I remember it. But and then of course the jobs at Chaffee, so I heard, paid more, than what Fort Smith was paying.
Right.
So that kind of helped things along.
And you worked on Fort Chaffee?
Yes.
Okay. So what was Fort Chaffee like back during that time while you were there? Like soldiers and all that?
Yeah, you'd see them if you were on the main street there. You'd see them in their uniforms, walking up and down, or going to different places. And actually, to me, it never changed that much.
Right.
But maybe because I was there, I don't know. I don't know what it was.
Okay. So you remember the Cuban refugee crisis that came in?
Yes.
Now, was Fort Chaffee was still a fort at that time, because that was back in the 80s, am I correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so what was that like? Well, I guess what I'm asking is, was that scary for you at that time? Because they were kind of like some riots or something like that?
They had some, but they would be what they call the cantonment area.
Uh-huh.
And so we were never involved in it. But I remember coming back from lunch one day, and they had I guess he thought he could get by with coming over. I worked at the equipment pool, and there was trucks and vehicles, and he got up in there thinking he'd hide from them. But they caught him. That's the only time I remember anything that close or, anything like that happening.
So you don't remember any type of problems they may have caused in Fort Smith?
No, I know there was, because didn't they have some things in the paper? They had write-ups about it.
Okay. What about y'all? Do y'all remember any of that? Could y'all add into that?
I worked out there during that period.
Okay. So, what happened?
They were pretty rowdy. They were a lot different than the Vietnamese. A lot.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. It was like day and night. Yeah. There was some good people in the Cubans, but there was a lot of, what we were told was that Fidel Castro had opened up his prisons and
Dumped them all
asylums.
over here.
Yeah.
He dumped them, and cannot believe it. But this one that worked with me, I worked inside the compound. The PX had a little store for him, and I worked in that store, and I had an interpreter, and I had a guard that worked with me in there, and then I had this Cuban that thought he worked in the store with me. Well, he did.
Right.
I took upon himself to work with me, and I let him, because he was about 6'5".
Right.
And anyway, but the ones that had been in prisons had tattoos on the inside of their bottom lip.
Right.
I did not know that.
Yes.
What about y'all? Do y'all have anything to add to it or anything?
I worked out there during that time with the PX, and I was there the day that they had one of the riots. I think they had more than one. Yep. And we watched from the window as they were going up Main Street, trying to turn over vehicles and guard shacks, and marching their way towards the front gate.
So that sounded pretty intense.
That was scary.
And the military police couldn't touch them.
Hmm.
That's when I met my ex-husband, and the military police couldn't touch them.
So it was local law enforcement that had to come and put down the riot, because that's actually what I read into what research I've done, that the military police didn't have, it was some weird thing, they didn't have really authority of them. It was a local law enforcement, like the Arkansas County Sheriffs.
Well, they didn't do anything, I don't think, until they got off
Oh,
post.
okay.
When they Not
Okay.
on post. Then they did something.
Okay. So while Fort Chaffee, when it was a fort, still an active duty post. Um, let's go on to where when it closed down. What happened once Fort Chaffee closed down to Fort Smith and the surrounding areas?
Well, things just kind of went downhill, but y'all are going to have to help me because I can't remember.
When it went from a garrison to state.
Yeah. Like, did a lot of jobs leave the area? Because I heard rumored that when Fort Chaffee was actually active duty, you could find a job, but you couldn't find a house. But
That's
after
probably true.
Fort Chaffee closed down, you could find a house, but you couldn't find a job.
Yeah, that's probably true. It was scary every time they'd tell they would activate it and deactivate it. It seemed like every 3 or 4 years. Do y'all recall? It was kind of I thought, the way they did it.
Because that was y'all's way of life.
Yes.
It's because of Fort Chaffee. It gave y'all a way of life.
That's right. My
Okay.
dad worked out there when they first. I probably said that when they first started building it.
Right.
And I think he was there about 3 or 4 years, and then he would go to other camps or forts.
So I wanted to bring that up to you. And I told Debbie about this already. I did a little research on your father
Oh, really?
because he was involved with creating Camp Chaffee. And the place that he was involved in building in Alabama was actually Redstone Arsenal U.S. Army base in Alabama, which is still an active duty post to this day.
Yeah.
That's where all of Army munitions goes, is Redstone Arsenal.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Did y'all remember that?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I didn't know.
And he had researched, and he knew that Dad was there.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how I could have missed it, but
Well, the reason why I know, because I've been to Fort McClellan, and I haven't been to Redstone Arsenal, but I've been to the other active duty post that's in Alabama. And McClellan is 1914, which is World War I. And the other one came about around the Vietnam era, which would make Redstone Arsenal around 41, 42, World War II era, around the same time your father was done with Camp Chaffee.
that's more than I could ever remember. I'm glad you have that information.
So, but is there anything else you'd like to talk about with Fort Chaffee and how did the closing of Fort Chaffee affect the other local areas?
I don't know so much about that, but I know it sure affected the post and
Right.
people leaving. But then they'd come back usually. Some of them would, when they would reopen.
Okay.
And, you girls are gonna have to help
It
me.
was just like, its own community,
Right.
you know, and
Yeah,
it's
it was. They had chapels and I guess schools. Now, now when Dad was over there working with the prisoners of war,
Hmm.
he was right with them. I mean, he was right there working with them. And to me, that was scary
Right.
because they were the prisoners, but they were as harmless as our GIs were, probably.
Right. So your father worked with the German POWs.
Well, he was a carpenter, so he was repairing things and all, and so
Right.
he got to talking with several of them.
So do you know who those Germans were?
No, do y'all remember?
I know who they were.
You do?
I do. They were part of Rommel's African Corps.
Really?
So when Patton and them came over and took North Africa and pushed Rommel's Corps out, all of Rommel's African Corps was shipped to Fort Chaffee. So that was the type of people that your father got to deal with, was Rommel's famous African Corps.
Oh my goodness. That. I'm glad you have that information.
Yeah, I've actually been looking forward to having this talk with you because it's interesting to be around someone who had an actual family member working and building Camp Chaffee, and it was surrounded and submerged around all these type of people. So,
I'll be.
Well, I'm telling the story about the German prisoner sketching the picture off of your school picture, wasn't it?
Oh Oh yeah, Daddy. Like I said, he is acquainted, pretty well acquainted with some of them. And one was like a sketch artist, and he took my school picture. And this German, was his name Fritz, or can y'all remember?
That's what you told me. His name was Fritz.
I think that's what it was. He did the sketching on 8x10, I guess it was. I still have it. And Daddy liked them all. And I don't know, I repeat myself sometime, but did I tell you, the German told Daddy, if your big man and our big man have already told us.
Yeah, no, go tell it again.
If your big man and our big man was fighting, there wouldn't be a war. So I'm sure that was true.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know how it is.
Well, I really appreciate you coming and talking to me and letting me record this. I really do.
Well, thank you.
And I'll make sure that I get this burnt on a thumb drive separate for each of y'all,
Okay,
so
thank
y'all
you.
can have this.
And I will add that all three of my daughters worked out there at the PX at different times.
Yeah.
Can y'all say what years? Well, Debbie's out there a long time. Debbie the elder.
I only worked a year, and
really?
nothing was going on the year that I was there.
How did you sing?
I mean, there was a lot of traffic. The
Right.
guys were there, but there wasn't anything, like,
no war or anything like
well, no Cubans but I do remember whenever the Vietnamese were here, and she did get, acquainted with a few of them, and we'd meet them. And remember they made us stuff.
Yeah,
And
gave
they'd
us
send us stuff after
trinkets.
they got what was it?
that? Relocated or?
Yeah. Yeah. What did they call it? Sponsored. They got
Sponsored,
sponsored.
okay.
Like one was up in was it Minnesota or somewhere?
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably
and they'd send stuff back, and
Okay.
probably have some letters from them somewhere. And then one of them
I
made
have
a
all the
picture.
pictures they sent me.
Really have a deer,
What?
a deer. It was made out of real fine
I
wood
forgot about
carving.
that. That's got to be at the house or something.
I'm
ain't
sure
it?
it is. I told Edward we've got everything. We don't get
No,
and
it may be in the attic, but we have
yes, and then I've got in here in my closet. I unpacked it after 40 years. I took the original Army packing off of it. One of the paintings I bought from a Cuban from the store we had for them. I bought dogs, birds, paintings, you name it. They knew to bring it to me, and I'd buy
Right.
it. I don't know where they come. This one could catch a bird out of midair, and I'd buy it just to get it released.
Right.
But I have a painting that I probably should donate to the library, or some library
Yeah.
museum.
So that's what I wanted to ask y'all, and I'm glad you brought that up. And I was going to ask you to get a consensus. So Debbie sent me some pictures of some paperwork that your father had when he worked at Camp Chaffee about the civilian records and stuff like that, about maybe possibly putting in a museum there at the Fort Chaffee Museum one day. That way your father's stuff can be saved and preserved.
Oh, yeah. I thought at one time they did have, or they started one.
They
Oh,
do.
they
They do have one, but it's
Okay.
under renovation right now. So, and I can give that contact information to Debbie.
Well,
I'd like to say I worked out there in 75.
Uh huh.
The Vietnamese came in May of 75 through their relocation program, and that's where I started. And off and on, I guess maybe through the summers, and then there was a time I was full time through the end of the year 1980.
Okay.
So I was there with the Vietnamese and the Cubans.
And the Cubans. At any time were you, I mean, with the Vietnamese, y'all seem to have, because they weren't actually militants, the Vietnamese weren't. They were actually people that were helping the GIs while they're in Vietnam, and they pulled them out during the fall of Saigon. But were any, especially you, since you worked around the Cubans, were you ever afraid that they were going to try and harm you? Because, I mean, they weren't exactly good people. I mean, I understand not all of them were bad, but you
I
had...
calmed down. Debbie did. I was in the PX, so there was a fence between where I worked
Yeah.
and where the Cubans were. So I was never afraid. Even when they were rioting, I never had fear that they were
And did you do? Was it your Debbie that had the guard?
Me.
Yeah.
I was never afraid of them though. They tried that one that I told you. Who
Right.
thought he was my protector. He walked me from the store down to the.
So Sammy?
Sammy was his name. He walked me from the store down to the gate, and he'd walk me back and forth. I had to quit because they made the. I drove a car, but then I had to quit driving the car in because they were siphoning gas and making bombs, you know,
Yeah.
multi-cocktails.
Yeah, multi-cocktails.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I had to start walking. So he walked, he guarded me from the, yeah, whatever. But anyway, yeah. And so, but I never felt that I was locked
I
in
don't
by
know.
myself one day, and I saw them trying to get up a riot. You know, they were going down the street, yelling and banging things, and I looked out, and who was the leader of the pack?
Your guard?
Yeah. Shaking my finger at him, you know, shaming him, and he just turned his head, you know. I was like, but I never felt.
So you worked at the PX there. Now that was on the historical side, because you gotta remember what my experience with Fort Chaffee is different from yours. Y'all were near where the church and the chapel was, more near the historical side to where the hospital was and the prison was.
Well, the hospital was further on back.
Yeah, and back there where the golf course
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
So the PX was in that area.
No, it was closer to the, about midway, I guess you
But
could
at
say.
one time, Cindy, weren't you in a small PX?
Yeah, there was a small PX inside the hospital area. at one time.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was two PXs, one in the hospital and
Actually,
one.
I think they probably had more than one.
Yeah.
more than that.
Oh yeah, you're right. It being an active duty base, they probably had like three
There
of
was
them.
one main PX,
Yeah.
and then they had like little
Shop
side
out
shops.
and stuff like that.
So the main PX is probably over there where the theater.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I've been to that PX
Yeah.
before it closed down.
Yeah.
They actually got a brand new MWR that's right across the way from it nowadays.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that old PX, I was in there a few times when it was open.
That's where I worked.
I didn't know they had
I
tore.
worked there from like 76, the summer of 76 maybe.
Maybe right after the.
You had to be a certain age to be able to work.
Yeah.
So whatever. Yeah. And I worked there until
It's probably 77.
I quit and went to Pratco.
Yeah.
In what year?
Kinda
It
had
was
a
after the 9/11 attacks, a year or two after that, so whatever.
We
But-
need to write things
Well,
down.
3 years.
Daddy was,
Yeah,
my
so-
dad was real good about keeping records and
We went to Germany.
Okay.
certain dates. and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
What?
No, I was just saying there's a time frame. The time frame I went to Germany. I
Yeah.
didn't work.
So, is there anything else you'd like to?
No, I'm just glad that we all got to be a part of that.
Yes.
Aren't y'all?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that was. I mean, what y'all got to be a part of out here and experience all that. A lot of people don't get to. I mean, being this close to an active duty post that was just so important to the nation's defense and doing what they're doing. And I'm glad that y'all are here to let me record y'all's story so y'all will hear it and y'all will have it.
A lot of
And
people
I'm-
in Fort. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go
A
ahead.
lot of people in Fort Smith, they just would act like Chaffee wasn't even there. I never understood that.
Right.
Because it's in the paper a lot.
Right.
So they had to know it. But I guess I knew so much about it or felt involved because of Daddy being there at the very beginning.
Right.
My daddy.
So you had a special relationship with the place because of
Yeah.
your father.
Yeah, we all did.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be putting this stuff in my dissertation. So y'all's story that y'all told me today is not only going to be on video for y'all, but it's also going to be written history and written record for my school towards the PhD. And again, once that's done, if I can get it published, I will make sure that y'all get a copy of that dissertation as well, because this isn't my story that I'm trying to tell. My story is only begins around the newer part. So my story can only be around 2005, 2006 was the first time I ever came out to Fort Chaffee. y'all's story is more important, that needs to be written and needs to be told and needs to be remembered. And I appreciate y'all's time. I really do.
Sure.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate you being interested enough
Oh yeah.
to do that.
Yeah. There's a lot of history of Fort Chaffee.
Yeah.
I
They,
remember.
that they built them fast, but she
Yeah.
said that they were for, she thought for Chaffee.
See, that's
For the GIs and stuff.
that's what I heard too. Is when Fort Chaffee was an active duty post, you could find a job, but you couldn't find a house because they couldn't build them fast enough. And that's where towns like Lavaca and all those other surrounding, maybe not Charleston or Greenwood, but Lavaca,
Bloomer.
Central City, Bloomer.
But Mom worked with people that work, I mean, they lived,
Oh, Lord.
You
they
know,
travel.
not that it's that far, but, you know,
Well.
but Mansfield, Subiaco,
Paris.
Not
Paris,
there,
you know,
further. Who was it other that
The Whack.
traveled?
Carol the Whack.
No.
I thought
No.
she,
Who was it that traveled so far? Someone you worked with traveled over an hour.
Yeah, it was like on your way
every
to-
day.
Who did I just say a minute ago?
it was on their way to Little Rock. It was somewhere between here
Yeah,
and Little Rock
yeah.
that they
Yeah.
drove, but I can't remember who it was either. But what, Carol?
And then Mother worked for Warren Johnson. Have you ever heard about Warren Johnson?
Mm-mm.
Bring Warren's name up someday and see what you hear.
Okay.
Warren was. Tell everything about Warren, Mother.
The good, the bad. No, he was really a good boss to me.
He was
but
a genius.
He knew how to step on toes too.
And then he knew how to light a fire. That's what Warren.
That was it.
Warren knew how to light a fire.
Yeah. I don't even know if he's still alive. Do
He's
you?
not. He passed away a couple of years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Warren was a good guy, but he did not want to be on his bad side.
Yeah, you got to stay on the good side of
But
it.
he wound up being what? What did they call it when it was the Garrison Post? He wound up being what?
Deputy post.
Deputy
Commander?
Post Commander,
Yeah.
I guess. After
He
everybody.
was really smart. I always told him he should not have stayed at Chaffee. He should have gone on it. But and his family was here, so he was happy
a
here.
warrant officer, retired warrant officer. Brad. He's a genius.
He could look up Bob Cherry too.
What now?
I think Bob Cherry passed away.
Yeah, he did. Bob Cherry.
Yeah.
What, he
Forgot
post
about him,
commander?
did y'all?
He post
How could we
commander?
forget Bob?
First Spence, he was
Oh, Colonel.
no, Bob, Bob Julian was.
Which
Well,
one?
what was Bob Cherry? Robert Cherry. Bob Cherry.
Bob Cherry was,
CID.
yeah, CID.
CID. That's it.
Criminal
Yeah.
Investigation, yeah. And he knew everything, right?
Yeah, he
I
did.
thought he did.
Yeah, he did. Something what his son was doing.
Yeah, probably.
He buried his head in the sand on that one. He knew
He
what
was
we were
fun.
doing. Yeah, he
His
knew
son
what
was
was
fun.
That's funny.
He was the baby, so he just,
I wish I had some of Daddy's. I don't know how many pictures or anything we have, but I wish I had some of the Daddy's information. Do you know where it is?
Like what, Mom?
The pictures or anything he might have had. I know that I have a booklet, and you might be interested in that. I don't know, but it's not very large, and it's probably about an inch thick. That tells about the jobs and everything.
Okay.
I think I have,
You may have it. Somebody has it.
No, I don't think I have a
No, it's
booklet,
put up.
but I've got a picture that I don't know how long you want. It's supposed to fold up. It's always been in a round container, and Brenda gave it to me years and years and years ago, and it's pictures of him with the carpenters. Well, of the men that were building Chaffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I want a copy of that.
And we had a picture of
that'd be something good to frame and put into the, you know what I mean?
Daddy and 2 or 3 of the other carpenters sitting on the back of a truck. I always liked that. You remember seeing that picture? But I don't know.
Now, are these the Germans, POWs you were talking about?
No, it was just civilian.
Okay,
that worked
just
out
civilians
there.
that worked out there.
Now, Daddy did get acquainted with some of the Germans.
Yeah.
I told you that.
Yes.
Story.
But the cruise cups, Elsie, you can tell that, Elsie worked out there.
Oh yeah, the lady next door, whose house is gone now, worked at the. Well, she worked at the
Mess hall.
mess hall for years. So we had quite a few people that And at one time, my uncle, who lived down the street,
Freeman Bateman.
I don't know how long he worked out there. Probably not very old, 'cause I think, was he 33 or 37? He fell off the roof and broke his back.
Mm.
And that did it for him. He survived, but nothing was ever right.
Right.
I can't think of anything else. Can you?
Oh, there's a lot, too much stuff. There's a lot, too much. And Uncle Bob worked out there.
Yes.
Mother's brother. He worked at
Richard.
Roads and
Richard
Brown.
worked out there. So it made an income for a lot of people.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
I didn't know Richard worked out there. What did he do?
I don't know, but not for a very long time, because I can't remember if I don't know if that's where he went to the army or
So Richard,
won't be invited to know, huh?
Mom's brother Richard, he was in the Second World War. He was in the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was in, what, 5 major campaigns?
I think he has a little card. I think there was 5 airdrops, like
So he was
parachutes.
airborne.
He was in the 101st.
Yes,
101st.
Yeah.
So Daddy would have been. They told Daddy he was my daddy. He was either too old or too young.
He was too young to go to the First World War, and he was too old to go
Yeah,
to the
that
Second.
was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell about whenever he came home.
Richard.
Oh.
Richard came home.
We lived near a park, and of course, I was always out there. And I heard Richard always whistled. My brother always whistled, real pretty. And I heard him whistling from up around the corner. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
And I ran up there to meet him. And I can't remember. I think he put me on his back. I was little, of course. Can you remember the rest
How long
of
had he been gone?
Oh, I don't know. Well, I always just worshipped him, you know. He'd probably been gone, what, 3 or 4 years? At least 3.
Tell Edward what
Yeah.
happened while Richard was over in the invasion of Normandy and in Belgium.
What happened?
Can you tell him about the postcard that he got? We've still got the postcard
From
The-
Richard?
that Granddad and Granny sent Uncle Richard. What is it called? The telegraph that Uncle Richard got?
Yeah.
Tell Edward about that.
When Sammy was born, Mother and Dad sent him Western Union.
Telegraph,
whatever,
yeah.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah, it was Western Union
Yeah.
Telegraph.
And announcing her birth. Is that what you want me to tell? And I still